Welcome back to the channel and to another in our Good to Great series, and in this one we're going to feature Lonely Doug by Big Hockey Guy. I believe Doug is a tree somewhere on here. Big Hockey Guy is one of the newer designers and exactly the kind of guy that I'd want to feature on this series because he's made a huge amount of progress in a short period of time. Like, the course looks really pretty. I've played it once, I think, because it was one of the very few good early courses released for 23. So I'm looking forward to giving it a bit more of a critical playthrough. I believe he had a course of his, was it the Tennessee one, that was in the National Treasure contest that did pretty well. Can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but that was a little while ago. So yeah, interested to give this one a play. And we'll go through and we'll try and pick a few things that we might focus on to improve and see where we go from there. So, usual thing, straight away, we're going to zoom out and have a little look at the plot. And it has this cool open vibe. Ah, yeah, there's Doug, that big giant tree, which, I mean, it's a little odd given that it's massive compared to all of the trees around the plot. Like, but it's a thing, it works. I really like the creek and the way that works through. That's very cool. And we've gone heavily muted lighting again, which I get it. I think we're probably overusing it a touch, but for this one-off course, looks really good. It's got a nice vibe and it makes sense. It mutes out the planting really nicely as well. We've got a rock wall, which is time-consuming. I know how much time that sort of stuff takes. Pain. Does it go all the way up? If so, that's a crazy effort. Good work. And a lot of planting and there's some interesting stuff. I think we're in Swiss, aren't we? The base terrain looks really interesting in this one. I think it works nicely. So yeah, I like the kind of interconnected feel of everything, and yeah, everything feels part of the bigger picture. Kind of like the last course we played with Colix, where it's like this overall environment rather than lots of set piece holes, which we like. Anyway, we're going to leap back to the first tee, which is somewhere around here. And we'll get going. So we've got these two bunkers encroaching on the left-hand side, and the further we play away from them, the longer our shot into this green. 427, so we don't necessarily need to take driver at it, but it's quite a narrow little green. I've got some thoughts on the green, but we'll look at that later. We don't mercifully have out of bounds up here, although I think you could have put out of bounds here. You'd have had to have given more fairway on this side. So I'm quite happy they haven't. Like you could bomb it all the way down here, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. So I like this as a tee shot. I might want just a little bit more space long and to the right, but I think that's probably because I was feeling uncomfortable over the tee shot rather than it needed it. I think sightline wise, this mound here isn't helping you. Just in terms of it blocking the bunker and seeing the green, we could do without that necessarily. You also, just off your green, you're basically ending up with the grass right there, and we don't have any rough around the green, so we're going dead into heavy rough. I think I remember playing this the first time. That's something I would say is just avoid doing that. I think you definitely need light rough around the green rather than just going straight into heavy. Less on this hole. This hole it's kind of going to be okay, but on others, that might prove more problematic. I'm right in between clubs. That looks all right though. I really like the planting. I think that's done well, and it fits. The lighting certainly helps with that. But the sunken Palo Verdes work really nicely. Yeah, it's got a very authentic vibe. I think it's kind of understated in terms of how you've done it. The bunkers, these two could sit a little bit better. I think if we could raise up this, you definitely don't want your red slope kicking you off into heavy rough. Raising this one up, and this one's kind of not quite sure where its low side is because you've got the land high here, high here, high here. It's gotten a bit buffed, Abby. Yeah, awful part. We're used to those. 156. They're pretty like pretty fast for the current meta as we've got it. Par 3 next. I'd say bunkers are going to be a main thing, because if you look at this one, it's gotten a little bit squashed here where you've kept this side high. I think if you were lowering this, raise this a touch, it's the dropping down into the middle that's causing this to look like it's fighting the land a little bit more. And if you drop this, that would fit with this gully that you've got down the left-hand side. And actually, kind of think we could use seeing that a little bit more off the tee anyway. Like, this dip is awesome. Just being able to see that rather than what we've got at the tee, where the planting's kind of obscuring just a touch. And the same with the second bunker. I think it would look a little neater. Now, that said, it's kind of doing a Redan-ish thing. Not a Redan, but it's got hints of it. Certainly not really got the distance for it. I'm hoping just playing to the front right of the green. It's just an easy, stress-free par. Although we're running away a little bit. I do feel like the greens desperately need fairway or light rough around them. Just rolling dead off into heavy rough is going to be... that's going to happen a couple of times this round. It'll be frustrating. We'll call it before it happens. That needs to turn and slow. Oof. Two solid holes to start with. I feel like we talked about in the last videos, maybe just making those absolute stunners. Like, that's I guess the thing. So here I feel like we're overprotecting against 3-wood when we're not really protecting driver. If you end up this side, you're in the bunker and you got the this one works. I just don't get why you wouldn't ever hit driver here. It's basically you either hit this shot and you're clearing the bunkers anyway, or you're dropping way back down and you're bringing them all into play. Why would I bring them into play? So a little bit more of the strategy onto the tee shot, and obviously it'll play differently with different winds, but you kind of want your bunkers staggered at different distances so that no matter what the wind is, you've got something that's causing interest. Similar things with sculpting here. This bunker, where are we? Here. Good pitch, there we are. I think either you want to be lowering the green a little bit so you don't have... So imagine if you're landing here, you're kind of rolling back and then into the heavy rough. You're never rolling into the bunker. So we want the bunker really on the same height as the green, the top of it. And that would stop, like when you get it, you've got this slightly awkward look where you've got the bunker and then this bit of fairway and then flag. I don't want it looking like this bunker is just fronting the green, which is a really cool thing to do. We do have some fairway apron, but only short, which it's a short hole. That kind of makes sense. Okay with that. Up 24. Some, as you can see, some of the sculpting here could have used a little bit of a flatten as well. Oh, well, we're going to find that little bit of no, we're not even going to find the fairway. Just a bad shot. Frustrating. I do like the green just perched above this little ravine here as well. Like, it would have been very easy, and I'm guilty of this as well, of just tucking the green right up against this. But I like that you've given it a bit of space to breathe, and the little texture splattering is really nicely done as well. Looks great. Well, that was an easy hole, and we've just bogeyed out of nowhere. Okay, we have two. So having just said we had no bunkers in the line of play, we are still... See, this one makes more sense. Because you're allowing 3-wood, you're just leaving more distance into the hole. You can take driver on, but you've got these two bunkers. I would argue you don't need both. I think where you've got the fairway cut, because it's cutting in this way, you only need this one. Because then people can choose to take this line, potentially end up in the rough over here. Or they can go this way and try and shoot the gap there. or they go this way and then they're potentially laying back in order to run out of, not to run out of fairway this way. But with this, you're just pushing them too far, and I can't hit driver here. So I don't think we need both. It would also slightly clean up your sight line, although you can see these two bunkers and how they layer. Those two look a little bit messy in terms of where they're drawing your eye. You're kind of going in, then out. So those two in a line aren't ideal. So if you lost this one, I'd probably be wanting to shape this one differently. So it kind of draws your line into this. I think ultimately what I would have ended up doing with this would have been to keep your fairway coming this way, have this bunker low side, and then maybe take your fairway out and could potentially lose these two. I mean, you don't need these two bunkers. They're serving no strategic purpose, really. There's nobody's challenging them. If they are, they're far enough back anyway. Now for this pin, if we go too far to the left, we've got to deal with that mound coming in. If we go to the right, we can kind of get around it a touch, which I like. This feature is really good. I might shrink it just a little bit more so that like there's a, if you see these slopes, might bring them just a touch closer to the edge so that like where this is the, I kind of think your pinnable space starts here and you put your flag right next to it. That then means we've not got a lot of room for error. If that's the edge of your pinnable space, if you could take that back to about here and make this a smaller feature, it would play exactly the same, other than giving you a bit more room for error around the pin. But that would be the only change I think I'd make. Now, for that reason, I do want to give 3-wood down this side a go. I want to see if I can generate that angle. It's also, and you will see this, moody lighting with undulating fairways like we've got is really tricky because people are going to think the fairway's flat when it isn't. I think the only thing I'd add with this is this feature could come round a little bit more. The reason is I've gone as far right as I possibly can, and I'm still taking on a bunker, and I don't have much fairway to land it short on, and it's 190 odd yards. Granted, I could have hit driver, but I wouldn't have got the angle. So it's almost like we're then discouraging the strategic play, because even when I've ended up with the angle, I've still got a pretty difficult shot in, and I can't land it short. So I'd love to be able to land this here and roll it on, which gives you the question of whether you'd want to lose the bunker. If you want to just take this bunker and move it back just a little, I think I might be tempted to do that. Or if we want to move this, one of those things. I think it's just how things are working a touch in conjunction with one another. It was a bad swing, but you can see what we're trying to do. That's also not good. Oh, safely in for par. I do really like the vibe of this course. Okay, next par 3. So if we've got a front pin, which we will have somewhere, again, we've got no room to land it short, which is going to be problematic because you're asking people to stop a 160 odd yardage club dead, which we can do, but it's forcing a shot you don't necessarily need. Generally, if you can put an apron on, like anything from 140 yards and on 150 really, because this is the odd par 3 where you want to force it. I think this would be fine if you didn't have the green running away and you're protecting with this mound, so we can't even land it here because we're kicking on. So I think we're just doing one too many defensive things here. We've got that runoff, which when the pin is here, we've just got so many things that are defending it. But this pin is absolutely fine. I do feel, if you look at it from the tee, I'm just going to try and zoom out over this way. If we just do it like this, one thing you'll notice is that you've got a lot of nice natural curving mounds, and then you've got one very flat line with the green. I'd be trying all I could with the bunker to make that green height, and therefore you can break up that flat line a little bit more, or it might be putting some planting or a mound here, or even mounding this bit a little bit more, but that one flat line does stand out just a little. Rock work is awesome. All of the planting looks great. And maybe just tying that bunker into the green a little bit more, because it's never really in play. On a little bit long, but I mean, it's safe. I say, I thought I pushed it. I have too much to add on this. Like, I think the main thing you're looking for is those hole designs and just really pushing them into spectacular by thinking a little bit more about those hazard placements. So this one is another example where we can't, well, we might be able to carry those downwind. We can't in this one. I don't really think, because you've got mounds bigger than this on your fairways. You look at the rises. I don't think this necessarily needed to be a rough mound, or if it did, I might just make it a little bit bigger or put your planting on top of it, because it feels a touch like we're arbitrarily cutting off the fairway, which works on a par 5. Great green site at the foot of the hill. And I love that it's a side-on green as well. I think my main thing with this one is just going to be bunkering. I think it's partly shaping, which you're going to get used to with more practice, and it's a classic thing of like it takes 6 or 7 courses to really nail bunkering, and that's with really working at it. Like they're good, but if you're pushing to that next level, it's your bunker shaping, because they're solid, but that's the thing. I would be really targeting to take them to that really beautiful level with those ragged edges and making them really fit the holes, and like how are they. So again, with this one, it's a little below the green height, although these work a little better. Like also, if we're going art theory sort of way, dragging your eye this way, and then this one's dragging your eye this way. So those two shapes are kind of fighting each other. It's not really in harmony as much as they could be. And if we go back to the fairway, you've got that little cluster of bunkers, whereas these two are separated. Like, I think just a bit more of a clear vision of what the bunker style is. And like, once you start really focusing on that stuff, and like, let's say you picked a real course to look at, like Pine Valley, say, which would be your bunker clusters. It's looking at how those work together and how they're tied together and how they link and where they're placed and how close to the greens and stuff like that. When you really dig into the detail, that's when you start learning an awful lot about them. I played an awful approach shot there. Deserve not to make a birdie. But I really like this green side. I didn't really talk about it enough. Again, I'm not sure you needed both bunkers. I think for something like this, I might have been tempted to have a little one here and one here with a bit more fairway over it, but much of muchness. I definitely don't think it needed to change. Yeah, I pushed that one too much. Shout out to the fence in the background. We love a good fence. Okay. I see the rough mounding. Again, it's kind of like the previous hole, and now I'm thinking a lot of it's got to do with your lighting, because I don't think they're too small. It's just the muted lighting makes it really hard to see. And the texture colours, perhaps. It's just quite hard to discern where they are. Because yeah, from the tee, I couldn't possibly tell you where the fairway ends and the rough begins on this hole. But I mean, longer distance, it looks great. Might be the heavy rough texture I would change. Maybe a deeper green, but would be one to mess with. Okay, so we're basically trying to make us play partial driver. Love the green site and the angle and the fact that it's disconnected. I think all of those things work really nicely. Same comments on bunker shaping. Were we to lay up, we can lay up to here with like a 5 wood and we've got a wedge in. 3 wood's very choked. Probably leave a bit more space at like. Why would we not add fairway down here? Because you've got a big hazard in play if you really mess up your tempo. If you play 3 wood down here, like you're getting the angle and your bunker is also like, why don't we bring fairway here? Let people play close to the water because that's your big hazard. You don't need the bunker. You can have all your bunkers on the other holes. Like when you're near the creek, let's see if we can make the most of that. I think that would be how I'd change this hole. Like, just take this entire fairway and shuffle it 20 yards left. And then lose that bunker. You don't need it. And then the whole concept is great. That says, I think that's going to be... Let's just go find the water anyway. But like, that would feel like I was rewarded for taking on the really big hazard that was there. Because I've got the angle. It's a decent shot. And we return to the clubhouse at 7. I like that. I like quirky routines. Kind of often imply that, like, returning to the clubhouse at 7 can often imply that we found just better holes along the way rather than trying to force something. Okay, now we've got the water more in play. Again, I feel this is one we've overprotected. So, where's my safe layup? Because if I don't want to hit driver and don't want to take on this very narrow fairway, which I don't, and I'm not going to drive the green, to be honest, I feel like my best option is genuinely to play a 3-wood out here. Because this is really tight and like there's a fair amount of camber there. So if I hit this part of the fairway, I'm rolling off. So my effective fairway I can hit is about 15 yards there. I'm likely to run into bunkers so I've got to hit perfect tempo. Now, if I'm assuming that I'm not going to hit perfect tempo, well, if I'm not going to hit perfect tempo with driver, I'm missing the fairway. If I'm not going to hit perfect tempo with 3-wood, I'm missing the fairway. 5-wood, potentially a little bit more space, but also could still run into that bunker. I think we needed to lose these bunkers and give a load more space here. It's that, what if people can't? Now, for purposes of video, I'm not going to play a 3-wood to here, which is what I would do probably in the actual game if I was playing this on rounds. Because I feel like that's going to give me my easiest, safest option of making par. Ridiculous though it might seem. I'm not going to play driver. So we're having to hit this tiny gap with 3-wood. Not a bad swing. Take that. Very proud. Okay. So then we've ended up with lob wedge over little false front. Probably like the green to be flat to the front so that if I'm a little short, I'm not rolling off into the heavy rough. But otherwise, I'm okay with this. Too bad. Be interested to know whether that is drivable. I guess probably downwind. I think it's a good hole that could easily be a great one with just a removal of a couple of bunkers. And actually, throughout the front nine, that's probably a pretty common message from me. It's just like, which bunkers can you take out and the hole gets better. But we do come back on 9 as well. This one's interesting. I don't know what this bunker's doing. It's basically taking out 3-wood. Because if I hit 3-wood, I'm hitting across the fairway again. And it's forcing me to hit a partial driver. Which is interesting, but there's a lot of space there to hit partial driver into. I think, to be honest, we don't need to hit partial. I might move that bunker up about 15 yards or so to be really, as in, so that I have to hit 15 yards further to carry it. But I do like the diagonal nature of the fairway ending. I like the way it intersects with the creek. Or you bring your tee forward a little bit and really challenge people. There's a great hole at, I can't remember which one it is. If you play RJ Wils's Avery Fields, there's a ton of really awkward tee shots with how you're hitting across fairways. I think with this one, there's potential for really doing that with the creek there. And it's almost there. Like, nicking something like that would be great. The only thing I'd say with this one is it feels a touch similar to 2 holes ago in terms of how you've angled the green and the bunkering and the disconnected nature of it. But it's I don't think it's as good of a green site as that one. It's still solid. There's a shot. Well, at least we found some swings down the stretch of that front nine. Really enjoying it so far. I mean, I'm trying to pick up on everything I can because that's kind of the point of this series. But there's so much to enjoy. Like that, it just feels very relaxing as a round of golf. Okay, so we got our cross bunkers, which basically split the fairway. One thing that immediately leaps out is the fairway shaping here. So, understandably, you're wanting to split the fairway and kind of say, well, you get a better angle from further right, and you can basically trade angle or distance. But let's look at what the fairway's doing. It's going really wide and then choking in tiny bit, like really tight here. Why would we not taper that or bring it up here? Like, people could use that fairway. Or from here, why are we suddenly cutting in? So if you did carry all the way, you're running straight into heavy rough. I don't really understand that. If you're taking on the most hazard, why are we not keeping people in the fairway? The same thing kind of short. It's gone really wide, but nobody can ever use this bit of fairway because if you land it at 275, you're rolling out and into heavy rough anyway. Like there are sometimes when we do the curvy fairways, that massively reduces playability because you can't land it here without. You're basically encouraging people to land it in the heavy rough to land on the fairway, which feels a bit gimmicky. Yeah, bunker sculpting could be a bit neater in terms of how we're dropping it and making it work with the land and just allowing a little bit more of a lip above them. I think bunkers are going to be the key takeaway for me, generally. That should hopefully clear. Because ultimately it just means that I probably end up hitting centre most of the time because of where that fairway chokes. I like this big mound. And a cool little punch bowl. So if you did lay up, you've got this bowl behind. Tree line behind looks really good as well, and I love that when we're playing this course, we just keep getting little snapshots of other holes. I have to say, it's been quite forgiving as well, so I haven't been punished for missing greens too much and being just off the green. Ah, we're right at the foot of the really big tree. I don't feel like I've seen it that much, which is weird. Okay, and this is like our little bunker complex. This is an interesting little side on green. So it's quite a short hole and it mostly runs front to back with some little pockets and things. It's a good hole. I'd probably be trying to drop the land in front just a little bit more or raising this up. I think you've got a great look here. I'd probably raise the green 3 or 4 feet and I think you'd see the world of difference. If you encapsulated the bunkers and the green in one brush, like oval brush with the edges to about here, like encircling all of this, raise up 3 or 4 feet and I think you'll get a great look of the tee. Like those little things will make a big difference for you as well. It's not the best swing. Might need to sit. Fun hole though, and I like the way it's played with elevation as well. Here we go. The good thing about plots like this as well is you see the clubhouse from miles off too. So this is another one where I'd probably stagger the bunkers a little bit more because they're all in kind of the same area. So if I do hit driver over here, I've got a club down once more. Like definitely here, why are we cutting the fairway in and not allowing a little bit more? Because it just makes me. Obviously, I would probably taken on this side anyway. Because if you've got the club, you might as well. we could be using the water better on this hole as well. And we've said this before, but when the water is in play on one of your holes, let's bring it in. I like the green side, but you could have used this green side pretty much anywhere. Why might we not tuck it up against the water and have a bunker short left, say, if you wanted to? Or how long was the hole? 450? Yeah, you maybe wouldn't have needed a bunker necessarily left, but I feel like bunker next to water usually, like not always, but usually implies that we're missing the possibility of using the water a bit better. Oh, we're on a pitch. Whoops. Huh. I have no idea how that worked. That was very strange. Anyway, moving on. Bizarre birdie. Okay, 13. This one feels a bit forced, and again, the bunker here is unnecessary. I would lose. This is the sort of hole I tried a lot when I started designing, or like two or three courses in, like this kind of 11 style hole where you've got a little stream running through. You have to have the stream be really tiny for it not to feel gimmicky, and generally I wouldn't be planting it. And you also want to provide a ton of space to avoid playing on it. Now, as is, the best line's always going to be to the right, which is the wider fairway, I would argue. Yeah. Because that's going to stop us. I mean, you're playing maybe a touch more at the water. I think with where you've got this as a central hazard, it's quite tricky because we're not necessarily getting angle benefits from either side, I would argue. Bit of distance here versus angle there. I don't know, this one feels a little clunky. I would probably have had lots more fairway over here. To be honest, I'd have not used this fairway for this side of the hole at all and just played it all around here. I think that would have been a neater hole. That's the, or fairway just this side might have been good. And then you hop over. Because then you're encouraging people to play as close to the water this side as they can for the better angle. The more they hedge their bets, the more they're hitting over the water there. But this is kind of neither one thing nor the other, really. We're going to go this way and we're going to hit it very fast. And again, you can kind of see the bunkers struggling to sit in the land because you raised up the back of it, but not this part. So it's a little awkward. And then, let's leap into camera mode very quickly. I think one other major thing with your bunkers is trying to tie them into the land around them. Like, one big difference I'd say between people who can sculpt all right bunkers and people who can sculpt great bunkers is how they fit into the rest of the land. So when I'm bunker sculpting, if I'm bringing up this bit, like that, wanting to put a bunker here for me affects the land all the way out to like here. So it's like, well, then this has to come up. And then in order for that to come up and it not look unnatural, you're going to be gradually raising little mounds around here and just tying it in. I think that would be a big benefit as well. Equally with this one, part of the issue is we want to be lowering the land here, which will mean you can see it a bit more, which means you have to jack the back of the bunker up a little bit less, and it will just be a bit neater. So I think considering your bunker sculpting, like not just that part, but extending all the way out will make a big difference for you too. Right, let's see if we can fluke another birdie out of nowhere. Oh no, we cannot. That's as bad of a swing as the previous one. Sit down hard. Yep, we're still good. This is how you envision the hole being played, right? I mean, I will take a bogey on that hole and run. Played that horrendously. Okay. Blind tee shot. Blind tee shot where we potentially, probably not running out of fairway. I don't mind the bunkers in play if you, in this case, because you've given us an aiming marker, and if we go straight over that, we are probably middle of the fairway. Again, I don't think you need to necessarily stop having fairway here. Okay. Ah. Interesting. Try this again. I do get this occasionally when my controller's a little too far away from the computer and just doesn't pick anything up. Yeah, these bunkers are, this one particular, struggling with like the land in front of it. And also I think you just want to extend your fairway out a bit closer to the bunker, much as you possibly can. Let's see if we can make an up and down. Nope. Oh no, maybe. It's a little less severe than I thought it was. The greens have been nice and benign, but also I think potentially missing chance to have a little bit more character. And it's tough in this game. Like that's the battle I think we're all fighting, where it's like, oh, how to put big slopes on the greens without them becoming unplayable. I've really enjoyed them. I think for CC they're perfect. Okay, next one. This ended up on Elite, I want to say, as well, which might have meant dialing it up a little bit. Okay. This hole, conversely, I'd want to be a little bit longer because I think you've got a great green site. And what you probably want is people. We've had so many aerial approaches, we'd really like a ground game approach. You brought this bunker, made it a little bit smaller perhaps, but brought it 10 yards forward, lengthened the hole, say 30 yards. I think you've got a really interesting ground game approach where you're asking people to bounce the ball around or hand it long. And with where you've put this on the Cape, it doesn't really need to be a long. We've had lots, I guess it's variety. We've had a lot of aerial approaches. How could we do something a little bit different? Because I hit a lot of wedges in, which is enjoyable, but we want to really be testing as many aspects of a player's game as possible. I also like that we've come back to that hole we previously played. That's a nice little routing trick that I personally love using. Now got our par 5 going back up the hill. Again, like, why are we really pinching 3-wood? We've got all this space we could be using. There's no real elevation change to speak of when driver is just hit straight over it. Assuming I hit my tempo, which obviously I won't. What's happened to driver? Okay, I remember this green. I really like it. This one, early, you did put fairway around the front, but not around the back. So, like, if this is meant to be a runoff, what are we running people off to? We're running off to a little bit of fairway just off. Like, for me, just have it as green. That's not really a defense. It's just saying you're going to chip from here, and I really want to see how you do with a 3-yard chip. That's not really what we're after. If we go long, might like a little bit of fairway or light rough long, but I'd say light rough around every single one of your greens. But I do love the backdrop. I really love the wall. I think that comes in, that works so nicely. The bunker's short. I think this one, these three tie in together quite nicely. This one's a little bit out on its own. Not certain the bunker stacking necessarily fits this course as well. Like, I don't know. Something off about them. It might be size. Oh, I was going to say I thought I'd mess that swing up as well. That's all right. Really like the planting in that wall back there. I think that just ties this hole in so nicely to the rest of the environment. Okay. Big downhill tee shot. benign par 3 green. This is another one where I kind of feel like the hole could be longer. Like you've got this big open view. We've got no hazards around the green, and I'm hitting a 6-iron. Right. I don't know. This if we'll come back to this at the end actually. It's a solid golf hole. It's like, what about that is really grabbing my attention? Because you've got the great vista in the background, and you've got all the potential in the world with the green side. Like, this is a where are we? There we go. That's such a good look. However, I don't think the bunker is adding anything for you visually, which is a shame because you could really frame this, and you've got the tree in the background. Like, this is the picture postcard hole, I think. But how are we dressing up the green surrounds and the hole itself, and how are we going to make people think, oh yeah, remember that hole? And not just because it was a pretty view, but also because it played really well. Well, you could do that by having it be a really memorable shot of like you're hitting a 3-wood in or a 5-wood, and you've really got to think about where you're landing it, or you're kind of jazzing up the bunkers a little bit more. We kind of just got this flat green, and we're hitting. And it's not totally flat; it's running front to back a little bit. But there's not that much memorable about the hole. It's solid, it works, but that's your chance for a knockout blow, and I think that's what we're looking for. Okay, 18, and we're hitting over the road, and it's drivable 4. I think I'm not sure I like this as an 18th. I think drivable 4s at the best of times are tough to do well. We've got a green side that's kind of a null, which could have put your green by the creek. We're bringing the road into play big time if you lay up, so why would you not go for the green? Okay, we're going to play the game of where would you put green for this hole. Right, 1 sec, let me work out what my camera's doing. We've also, if we're talking routing, you had 1 tee here, and now where are we playing from? Here. We've kind of sandwiched this hole in, and we're tracking back a little bit, which is a little bit funky. Honestly, if you jazzed this hole up, you could have ended up with a par 3 18th, or I feel like you've just left yourself a little bit too little to work with. Or this could have become a par 4 where we play down here, and then we come around the corner and we hit to that green, and that would be a really good look. I prefer it where, like, if you're hitting from here, that would be a great look on 18. Still think the road is a little problematic, but we can work with that. You've got the 9th green there, you've got the first tree. Okay, you kind of, there's every possibility also you kind of worked yourself into a bit of a corner here. But I do feel it's a touch gimmicky as an 18th, and it's a shame because the course has been so nice and natural and understated for the most part. And now it's kind of like I'm just having a shy at it with driver because I don't think there was a reason to lay up, really. You could. Drivable par 4s are tough. Go on. Just squeak your way on there. There we go. I thought I'd missed it. Well, there we go. 6 under. That's going to be the best round on one of these we have, I think. I mean, there's so much about it I like, and whilst I was able to nitpick a lot because you are still learning, and I think it's important to really make that clear, like a lot of the stuff is stuff that people learn from getting this sort of feedback on their 3rd or 4th or 5th courses, and it's stuff you'll be able to fix really quickly. Things like the bunkering is going to be a work in progress, the shaping, sculpting, that'll come to in no time whatsoever, but because it's easy in there to comment on, that'll be the sort of thing I look at. So that would be number 1. I think it's working out what your bunker style is and how it's going to work, and sculpting so that they blend into the rest of the land. That would be takeaway number 1. Takeaway number 2 would be where you're hazarding and where you are putting bunkers, particularly if they're not taking on driver, what then? And like dropping the bunkers back to 250 is actually kind of often taking out 3-wood. Thinking also about where you're cutting your fairway. Like sometimes we're over defending against certain plays, which therefore forces people into hitting driver rather than providing that variety of options of like, well, if I don't want to hit driver there, maybe I can hit driver here and have a little bit less. We don't want to take away. It's either this play or that play, essentially. Other things I thought about, like I guess my third main one would be, let's turn those good holes into really great ones with like, what's the defining feature about them? There's a lot of golf holes I really enjoyed. How many of them could I necessarily pinpoint and tell you, oh yeah, it's that hole that made me hit this shot? Green sites that really stood out to me, I thought the downhill par 3 really stood out, the par 5 up against the rock wall, obviously 17 that I remember. 18 I remember, and I'd argue for kind of like not the wrong reasons, but like that sticks out because I feel like it's a slightly clunky ending to the round. In when you compare that, and I guess what I'm going with that, when you compare 18 to the 17 other holes of the course, that's kind of the one that stands out as being really quirky, and therefore chucking that on 18 by the clubhouse with the road in front, it doesn't necessarily fit. Whereas if you'd put that earlier in the round, maybe that works a little bit better. And it's that sort of feel thing that you'll get the more you design. Other than that, what other green sites do I really remember? I really remember that par 4 on the back nine that was down by the creek in the little cape where I wanted it to be a little bit longer. I thought that was a lovely green site. You've got that part of this kind of nailed. It's now thinking about a variety of shots. What shot are you asking people to hit in? And therefore that they're going to remember. Because when I go and play like courses that I absolutely love, it's like, let's say if I'm playing an RJ Wills course, because we mentioned him earlier, I can tell you so many of the holes on Avery Fields because of the shots I have to hit in, not just because of the setting. And I think that's the main thing you need to try and focus on and like take from courses like that when you're playing the courses from like the very best designers. What shots they make you hit, how much variety is there in what you're doing between hole to hole. I think from this one I had a lot of wedges in. Partly that's because of the length of the driver on this course, or in this game, sorry. But also I think you sequenced. If we look at the distances, 405, 439, 441, 43. You can see you've got a lot of similar distances in the 440s, 420 to 440. I think we've got a lot. Whereas, could we have made that one was an interesting one, the 8th. I remember liking, and that one worked really well. That's the one where we went down by the creek and then back up to that disconnected green. Or was that 7? Either of those, one of those. But there's a lot in that same sort of distance range. That's one way you can easily vary. But anyway, that's it. There's so much to like. I mean, the planting's really good. Generally, you've got a good grasp on how to build a golf hole. Clearly, how to route a course, although I think 16, 17, 18 got a little bit squeezed. And also, like, clearly, environment creation's a real strength. There's so much to enjoy here. It's White-tailed National, wasn't it, from the National Treasure? Really looking forward to seeing what you produce next, and I really hope this is helpful. Cheers for watching. See you soon.